get us started. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the panel, Uprooted, a discussion with and about internally displaced Israelis. The Hebrew Institute of White Plains is hosting the panel to mark this year's HIAS Refugee Shabbat by highlighting the current situation in Israel, where entire communities have been displaced from their homes, and it's unclear when they'll be able to return. We're thrilled to have a very distinguished panel who represent both organizations working on the ground in Israel to support and assist these communities and families, and also family members who are experiencing the current displacement. I'll tell you a bit about each of our panelists, and then you'll have an opportunity to hear from them. Then there'll be an open Q&A, but you can post questions for them in the chat at any time, and our moderator will pose those questions after everyone speaks. We are also going to post the organizations that the panelists are affiliated with, and these organizations will be our highlighted organizations for donations for the month of February. So now a bit about our panelists. Revital and Shachar David come to us through AJC Israel, and they and their 3 teenage children live in Shlomi, just on the border with Lebanon. All the residents received an evacuation order from their homes following the outbreak of the war, and they've been actually living in a hotel with their 3 children, initially in one room. Try that on for size. They've been living in Haifa. The residents were scattered between Jerusalem, Haifa, and Tiberias. Revital and Shachar's children are now enrolled in school in Haifa, and Revital is commuting a far distance for her work. Shachar has recently returned from Miluim IDF reserve duty. Carmi Tint and Eyal Tarchitsky are members of Dror Israel, a grassroots educational organization, and they live as a part of Dror's educators community in Sderot, just 2 miles from the Gaza Strip. On October 7th, Carmi was alone with their 7-month-old daughter in the safe room for close to 48 hours while terrorists roamed the street outside their home. She'll touch on that experience as well as on what it's been like since October 7th. For the last several months, Carmi, Eyal, and their daughter have been living as evacuees in a hotel near the Dead Sea, where they're also responsible for Dror's emergency relief programming. Dror provides therapeutic, emotional, educational support and has established makeshift schools for tens of thousands of evacuee children and families, and created leadership communities of evacuees at the Dead Sea hotels. Yotam Polizer is the global CEO of IsraAid, a leading humanitarian NGO. Yotam oversees IsraAid's global operations, strategy, and partnership across 15 countries, including the organization's ongoing emergency response to the Ukraine crisis. Yotam has built and led programs responding to some of the world's most pressing humanitarian crises, such as IsraAid's emergency response in Japan after the devastating 2011 earthquake and tsunami, in Sierra Leone during the 2014 Ebola crisis, and in Greece and Germany during the 2015 Middle Eastern refugee crisis. Also, in light of our resettlement work with Afghan families now living in Westchester County, IsraAid managed to help a large group of young women make their way out of Afghanistan when the US left Afghanistan. But that's a story for another time. Currently, IsraAid is focused on the internal crisis of displaced families and communities in Israel, as well as an incredibly important and interesting work that they are doing with survivors of the Nova Music Festival to help them recover from the horrific experiences of October 7th. Noah Gottschalk is Senior Director for International Jewish Community Relations at HIAS, where he leads the organization's efforts to build a global Jewish movement for refugee protection and welcome. Noah has 2 decades of experience promoting the human rights of people impacted by conflict, natural disaster, and displacement, and has spent much of his career living and working in countries experiencing complex crises in the Middle East and Africa. He's provided guidance to a wide range of US officials and policymakers at the UN Security Council, European Union, and African Union to ensure government policies are driven by the priorities of impacted people. Now I'll turn the program over to our very own Dr. Ayala Zoltan-Rakoff, who is a psychologist and special educator, and she will serve as moderator for our panel.
Good morning. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you so much to our panelists for giving of their time and sharing their experiences and hopefully a lot of inspiration for us and a lot of insight and understanding into what's going on and what each of them are doing and how each of them are coping. So we'd like to start with Shachar and Revital. Please tell us a little bit. Hopefully we can highlight them in a moment. So they will look bigger. There we go. So Shachar and Revital, tell us a little bit about how your life has been in the past little while since October 7th changed everything. No, we can't hear you
Okay,
yet.
good morning, everyone, and good afternoon in Israel. As Reina said, introduced us, we are from Shlomi. The 11 years before, we live in Nahariya, and we moved to Shlomi 2 years ago. At the beginning, it was, for looking a place with a lot of green and mountains and quiet to go far the city. Shlomi is a very little town, like Rina said, in the border of Lebanon. Actually, our house is 900 meters from the border. And when we moved to Shlomi, we didn't thought even that there is a kind of problem with this area because it was green and very quiet. At October 7, we were in our synagogue with the community. We celebrate the holiday. And then our rabbi said that go back to your home. It's very dangerous because there is an attack in Gaza, and maybe it will be in the north also. We make the pray, very fast, and then I came back to my home. My brother-in-law, Revital brother, is living in North Carolina, and he was phone for her a lot of times. So she picked up the phone because she realized that there is something very strange. And he said that there is attack in Gaza, please keep yourself. So we closed all the windows, closed the door, and we kept the Shabbat, but after the Shabbat, we opened the phone and the TV, and we saw everything. I should go on Sunday to India for my work. So I told Revital that I need to go, and if the army is not called to me yet, maybe it's not start in the north. So actually, in Sunday morning, I left to India, and Revital was very afraid. She go to his brother in the middle of Israel. She were there one week, and after I came back from India, they start to to spread, to divided all the citizens from Shlomi to all the cities that Rena said, Haifa, Jerusalem, and Tiberias. We got, like Rena said, one room in our hotel. It was at the beginning with our 3 children, and now we got one room more. Our big child, Ishai Yitzhak, is 19. He was in a mechina to the army, and they stopped the mechina. They said that he should come back home, so he was with us. And then he left Haifa to Eilat to live there. So now we have 2 rooms in the hotel. One is for our daughter and our young boy. They are together. And the other room is for us. Like Rina said, I went to the army 1 week after, and I was there until the last Sunday. I come back now. I start in my work, and like you heard, Revital need to move to Nahariya for her work, and I need to go to another place. And like you said, we are living in a small room, 2 meter square cube. In this Wednesday, it will be 4 months. This is the situation.
We can only imagine how difficult this has been and continues to be for all of you in many, many ways. Can you speak to what have you noticed with your children? What has come up to be the most challenging? And maybe it's different for each of your children because everybody processes things differently and everybody's a different age. What have been some of the main challenges that you've realized?
Yeah, we have a lot of talks with our daughter, or Simcha. She is 17. She has the Bagruyot now, the last 2 years in the high school. She very upset because a lot of her friends spread all over the cities. She didn't have any community with them. There are some girls and boys that they are here, but they move all the high school to Haifa. So a little bit she had the same teachers, but it's different because it's another city, it's another people, another girls and boys. She had a lot of problems now. She was in the high middle school in math and English. Now she's down. A lot of afraid nights. I want to come to talk with you, to be with you, to eat with you. You need to. It's different. We don't have our kitchen. We don't have our foods. It's a hotel. You need to spread your time between the couple, the children's, the food, the synagogue, the work. Everything is mixed, and the boy, Jonathan, he moved with his basketball group to Haifa. They very happy that they win a good player. But for him is he changed 4 schools in 4 years.
Wow.
So he changed the high school when we moved to Shlomi. Then because of personal problems, he moved to another city in Ma'alot. And then he now changed the high school to Haifa. So for this 14 years old, it's a very difficult to change a lot of high schools, a lot of friends.
Sure.
We are happy that the basketball is keeping him with a lot of movement. You know,
Right.
they happy, they win him, but it's difficult. And the last one is Ishai. He left us. He left home, go to the north of the south of Israel, to Eilat. We are happy for him that he's living, he's working, but he now is waiting to the army service in August this year.
Sure, that's a lot coming up. And we can only imagine how difficult it is to find just your own privacy, to find time to even regroup and to try to process everything that happened yourselves in the midst of trying to help your children find some routine and socialization and some success in school. It sounds really, really challenging. Speak a little bit about, I know you were going back to check how your house was doing and all of that the last time we spoke.
Yes, last week we went to Shlomi. Kindly, we are going to Shlomi every 1 week, 2 weeks, depend if we need clothes. You know, October 7th was a kind of summer in Israel.
Right.
And then we changed the clothes to winter clothes. And, you know, day by day, we don't know even what is the day that they wants us to come back to our home. So we change everything. Sometimes you said, okay, I will bring my toaster, and then I will bring my this one, and Revital wants his fan, and you know, it's something that so we are going home when it's enough safety to go and to see that there are no damage,
Right.
to feed our cats, to feed to see that the garden is everything is okay, and you know, to close the water. Last time that we went, we saw that Revital mother's house was damaged from the winter rains because the guys up didn't take off the leaves from the Mazavim, I don't know. So this is the situation. Twice a month we need to go to home to see that everything is okay and to bring things that we needed. And it's depend if the armies give us the permission.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to Eyal and Carmi now to tell us a little bit about their experience, and then hopefully we'll come back to you for some questions a little bit later. I'm sure everybody wants to learn more. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. First, we'll just say that we're really happy to be here, and fortunately, we're not happy to be sharing this story, but thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So we will speak a bit about, like we said, our experience on October 7th, as well as the work that we've been doing with Dor Israel in the evacuee sites, as evacuees with other evacuees. So this is, I'm Carmi, and this is actually Eyal, my partner, and our daughter, Neve. And now she's around 11 months old, but this was taken just a couple of days before October 7th. And I guess I just wanted to start by saying that I'm sure everybody here knows this, but the reality of rockets and rocket attacks from the Gaza Strip in Sderot didn't start on October 7th. We've actually been suffering from this sort of reality for the last around 23 years. And about 7 years ago, I moved to Sderot. I made Aliyah from Vancouver, Canada, about 12 years ago. I lived in Haifa, and then my friends from Dor Israel invited me to come join the educators community that we have in Sderot. And like I said, October 7th wasn't the first time that that I experienced rocket fire. And I can say it also wasn't the first time that our daughter Neve experienced rocket fire. That just in the 7 months of her life, there had already been a couple of days of, it wasn't a military operation, but of intense rocket fire from the Gaza Strip. And I think, I think Sderot is very different than Vancouver, Canada, where I grew up. And I know that 7 years ago when I told my parents that I was moving to Sderot, they couldn't believe it, and they kept asking me why I would do that. And I think, especially at the beginning when I wasn't sure, I also asked myself, why would I want to move to a place where you have 15 seconds to run to a bomb shelter? And I guess I wanted to for a variety of reasons. And one of the biggest reasons was to be a part of the educational work that we do in Dror Israel. So I'll just give sorry, just 1 second. The picture on your left is actually a picture from our porch in our building. We live in an apartment building with other residents of Sderot, as well as other Dror Israel educators. And the picture on the left looking out is towards the Gaza Strip, less than 2 miles from our apartment building. And the picture on the right is a picture we got sent that was published by Hamas about 2 years ago. And the target is on our apartment building. So that's from the other side, from the side of Gaza Strip looking out. And in Hebrew, it reads in a translation that like all of the possibilities are possible, as in all the possibilities are possible. The towers of Sderot, which we understand to mean that anybody, anywhere in Sderot is potentially a target. It doesn't matter where you live exactly. If you're a young child, an elderly resident, everything is possible. And here they're showing us that here. And in this reality, I think I asked myself, and definitely my parents, other people asked, why would I want to live in a place like this? And as I started to say, I think a lot of it had to do with wanting to be a part of a grassroots educational movement that seeks to make change in Israeli society. So I'll just say for a minute what it is. We're basically, like I said, a grassroots educational movement that's based around 16 educators' communities. And these 16 educator communities are located in many different cities all across Israel, with a focus on the geographic as well as the social periphery, meaning that we have an educators community in Tel Aviv, the center of Israel, but the communities and the populations that we work with are on the social periphery. So I live in the educators community in Sderot, and Eyal, my partner, in the educators community in Akko. And in each educators community, we focus on different community initiatives. So I'll just give a few details about the work that I do in Sderot, because it comes into play later on in the story. 7 years ago, we decided to try and work with the most underserved communities in the neighborhood, the five most underserved neighborhoods in Sderot. We established what we call a network of social activists, meaning that they're everyday residents that choose to take responsibility for their neighbors, for their families, on their street, in their apartment buildings, during times of regular times in Sderot when there's no rocket fire, as well as during emergency times when there's rocket fire. As well as all across Israel, we have our youth movement, Hanor Hoved Velomed, which is one of the biggest, and it is the most diverse youth movement, with Arabs, Druze, and Jewish participants, almost 100,000 altogether, operating in branches all across Israel. And I think this youth movement will come into play a bit later when we talk about how we're responding in these different evacuee sites. And lastly, we have a network of schools, mostly with youth at risk. And now I want to talk a bit about October 7th. I'll just touch on a few things. Eyal was actually in the north that weekend. with the educators community in Akko, celebrating Simchat Torah and his birthday, actually. And I was with our daughter, who at the point, her name's Nee, and hopefully you don't hear her crying in the background. At the point, she was seven months old. It was a Saturday morning, 6:29. I get awoken by sirens. And like I said, it's not the first time that I've been in a siren with myself or with my daughter. So it's as weird as it is to say, I wasn't that scared. I knew what to do. By no coincidence, the safe room of our apartment, in every house in Sderot, there's a safe room. And by no coincidence, that safe room is our bedroom as well as our daughter's bedroom at this point. So I quickly and quietly just got up from bed and closed the door of the safe room. And our daughter continued to sleep. And at that point, I understood that something was up, that it wasn't just a regular day of rocket fire, because it was nonstop. It just kept coming, rocket after rocket after rocket. And of course, I went on my phone and I realized that there were rocket attacks all over Israel. So I knew that something wasn't right. I quickly texted my mom in Vancouver and said, "You're probably going to see the news, just so you know, we're okay." And I texted Eyal, who was in the north, and I told him that we were okay. About half an hour later, Eyal gets in touch with me. He calls, but I don't pick up because the baby's still sleeping and I don't want her to wake up. He tells me that he's seen videos of terrorists in Sderot. We both didn't believe. I didn't believe that it was true. Eyal reassured me that he's watched it many, many times and that it's true. And at that point, I can say I got scared because rocket fire, I know what to do in order to protect myself and my daughter and the neighborhood activists that I work with. But terrorists on the streets of Sderot, I don't know what to do. I never went through any workshop. Nobody ever told me what to do for that. And Eyal told me that what I needed to do was I needed to leave our daughter in the safe room, close the door, go out into our apartment and pull down all of the electric blinds that we have in our apartment, and lock all the doors. I did that, grabbed my cell phone charger, went back into the room and waited. Half an hour later, my friend in the apartment building below asked me if I made sure that I closed all the blinds because she's seen terrorists outside of our building. At that point, I start to hear gunfire as well as rockets. And I understand that terrorists are outside. We spend the next day in the safe room. Neve, our daughter, didn't leave the safe room for a second. I was in there with her. At the same point, she was eating. At the same point, I'm in touch with these neighborhood activists, and we understand that there's a family that is alone. Their 5 kids are alone in the safe room. Other neighborhood, and the mom contacts us for help. The other neighborhood activists in her public housing complex decide to leave their families for different periods of time to go sit with these kids that are alone. So throughout this day, we're trying to also help people when nobody knows what's happening. I'll jump forward a bit, but the next day there's a break in rocket fire, and we decide that if there's a time to escape Sderot, it's now. So myself, my daughter, and a couple other educators from Dor Israel, we decide to leave. Because we're not sure what's going to happen when we leave our apartment building. In a conversation with Eyal, we decide that I'll keep our daughter on my lap. I won't put her in the car seat so that we can place her on the floor of the car if we meet terrorists. We drive out of Sderot and we meet Eyal in Tel Aviv, and we spend the next couple of days in the center of the country. And during those couple of days, we're in touch with these neighborhood activists, these 600 residents of Sderot, and we understand that a large majority of them have been evacuated to the Dead Sea. This is the first time in Israel's history that a city has been evacuated. Sderot is a city of 36,000 people, and it was evacuated at random. And myself, Eyal, our daughter, and the people I work with, the staff that I work with from Dor Israel, we decide to go to the Dead Sea to live with other Sderot residents and to start working. we get to the Dead Sea, which is a tourist location that has been turned into an evacuee site. We get there and it's utter chaos. There's nobody knows exactly who's there. Until this day, there's not finalized numbers. Nobody knows who's there, especially in terms of elderly residents that are just alone in their hotel rooms without people that usually help them to shower, to eat. And it's, like I said, just chaos. Parents are staying up till all hours with their kids in the lobbies. Everybody doesn't know what to do. Nobody has real understanding of what happened and what is going to happen. There's an influx of donations. There's physical fights between residents over these donations, as well as fights between hotel employees and residents. And during this time, we decide, okay, what can we do? We turn to our neighborhood activists and we say, let's try and get as many people who want to be responsible for what's happening now together. And we invite them in different hotels to just come to the lobby. Come to the lobby tonight at 7 and let's talk about what's happening. And I think this picture, I mean, it looks like I guess just a standard picture of adults sitting around in the lobby. But to us, I think it represents a lot of courage and a lot of strength, because each of these residents of Sderot came just like I came, with having gone through a lot on October 7th, and we came to this hotel. And I can say that most of us are quite broken, that people don't have a lot of strength. And these are residents that decided to form what we call hotel leadership committees. In the Dead Sea, we formed 7. And actually in the north, we have 2 hotel leadership committees as well, with evacuees from the north. And like I said, it's these residents that are choosing to be responsible for themselves and their neighbors that are now in these hotels. I'll tell just one story about that in one of the biggest hotels in the Dead Sea, it's about over 20 floors. And like I said, the elderly residents, actually most of the elderly residents of Sderot were focused and concentrated in this one big hotel. And the elevators of the hotel, because it's such a big hotel, it can take something like 15 minutes. You just stand there waiting for an elevator on the 20th floor to come down to the cafeteria. And what these residents on the leadership committee started to talk about was that there's these elderly residents that couldn't stand and wait for the elevator to go down to eat. So they would just go back into their room. And one of the first things that the hotel leadership committee did, they said, okay, we just need plastic chairs. Let's just get plastic chairs and place them at every floor of the hotel building, so elderly residents can come out of their rooms and wait and sit and wait while they want to go down to eat. And I think that that's a really good story, because at the same time, there's, like I said, there's an influx of donations as well as an influx of volunteers. And a volunteer that comes in the morning in the hotel lobby doesn't necessarily see that the resident on the 20th floor isn't eating, but a resident who lives on the 20th floor knows their needs. And that's the point of these hotel leadership committees, is us as residents, we can define what the needs are and dictate how we answer them, with the help of volunteers, of course, but they're the ones saying. Another thing that the residents did right away was organize the donations, and so that people could have equal access to the donations, that they wouldn't be fighting over them. And I can say one thing that's happening right now, we're in North America, but one thing that's happening right now, we're in North America speaking to different groups, is that the residents in Sderot are in the Dead Sea are part of a pilot program that we got them together for them to be able to talk about the conditions and the biggest issues about what it means to go back to Sderot, so that the municipality won't just, it's in partnership with the municipality, but so that the residents won't just get a text message saying, okay, now it's time to go back to Sderot, but rather they can be the ones involved. We can all be the ones involved in saying, what are our issues with that? What do we want to see addressed? And that's a wide scale process that our activists are leading.
Thank you so much. This is unbelievably inspiring, both just listening to what you've gone through and also all of the practical and advocacy work that you're doing. It's really amazing. just one or two more minutes, and then I want to be able to move on to the next group if that's okay, just so that
Yes.
we have all the agencies represented, because there's so much for us to hear and learn. Thank you.
Definitely. Okay, Eyal will just say one or two more stories.
Yes, okay. So I will shift and explain more about what we did generally in the Dead Sea and in Israel. As Carmi mentioned before, we are trained educators. I was an educator for youth at risk. We deal with a lot of situations. We're first responders in Ukraine, in the refugee camps in Poland and Romania. But all the knowledge and experience we had to help us when we met, for example, a kid that went to his educator and told him, I lost my father. Can you be my father? And our educators deal with these situations, and the advice that the psychologists gave us is that in the first days after suffering from trauma, it's very important what will be the encounter these kids will be in, how they rebuild their trust. So we called our activity, our programs, emotional educational first aid. As you can see in this map, we work in more than 50 evacuee centers all around Israel with more than 28,000 kids, teenagers, and also elderly. And I will finish just with one story. We established schools, we established daycares, youth movement branches all over Israel. And I will share a story about one traumatized teenager from Sderot that after the attack of 7th of October, she was evacuated to an hotel, and she stayed in her room for mostly all the time. Our educators invited her to be part of a leadership course that prepared her and 350 more evacuee teenagers to be young counselors for kids in the hotels. And she decided to go to this course, and afterwards she became a young counselor, and the educators could see that her smile come back to her face, and she felt like now she has the agency. She feels like the control over her life come back, and she also can contribute to the society. And I think that this story reflects a lot of the stories of the kids and teenagers, evacuees. We are working with them all over Israel.
That's really incredible. Thank you so much. Just a reminder to everybody who's listening in to please put any questions that you have for the panelists in the chat, and hopefully we'll get to as many as possible after everyone gets a chance to speak. Thank you so much, Eyal and Carmi. That was amazing. I want to move now to Yotam, who will tell us about IsraAid, about your organization, what you've been doing before, during, and since October 7th.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for all the incredible speakers. I can share personally, first of all, that I'm originally from the north part of Israel, not far from Shlomi. So my father works there, and I spend a lot of time in that area. So it feels very close to home. And I can also share that since October 7th, one of our best partners on the ground has been Dror Israel, where we've been together operating schools for the kids of Be'eri who went through one of the worst atrocities. So it's also great to connect with these wonderful partners, and I think we need more of these partnerships. So IsraAid has been around for 23 years. We were established in 2001. And the vision behind the organization was actually to work in everywhere but Israel. Our goal was to bring Israeli expertise and support to disaster areas around the world. We've been Sorry, 1 second. There's a phone coming in and I need to, yeah. Can you hear me? So Israel vision was to bring Israeli expertise and support to disaster areas, and we worked in 64 countries in the last 23 years. Never in Israel. We worked in remote places like Dominica, Haiti, Vanuatu, Afghanistan, even Ukraine, of course, South Sudan, and even in countries, again, that don't have diplomatic relation with Israel. We worked a lot with Syrian refugees. We worked in Indonesia, in Bangladesh. Whenever there's a crisis, we send our team in the first 72 hours. So we're not only first on the ground, trying to save lives, providing immediate relief, we're also usually the last one to leave. So we stay an average of 5 to 7 years in a project to help communities get back on their feet. Israel started as a volunteer-based organization. I joined as employee number 2, 4 days after the tsunami in Fukushima, where I led our relief mission. And since then, I've been leading a relief mission in 12 different countries. Most recently, I was leading this very dramatic Fauda-style, somewhere between Fauda and James Bond operation in Afghanistan, where we pulled out 205 girls from the hands of the Taliban. And they're all safe now. Thank God. Some of them, as you mentioned, are in Westchester, in the States. Some are in Canada and in other countries. But October 7th has been a game changer. And usually whenever there's a crisis somewhere in the world, it takes us about 2 hours to get on the phone with our emergency response team and build a rapid response plan. We decide if we're sending the medical team or the water engineers or the trauma specialist or the educator, depending on the needs that we identify. And here it took us about 24 hours, which is much longer than usual because obviously, like everyone else, we were shocked. It was personal for each and every one of us. We all know people who know people. We have friends and family members who were murdered, who were hostages, who were still in captivity, who were evacuated, who were immediately drafted to the IDF. So, you know, responding in at home is a whole different ballgame for us. But we also realized that unfortunately, all the experience that we gained from all the world, from all these other crises, again, Ukraine, I think, is a good example, working with refugees and displaced communities and managing very complex emergencies is unfortunately very much needed at home. And it took us about 24 hours, as I mentioned. So, but already in October 8th, our first emergency response team made it to the evacuation centers in the Dead Sea and Eilat, where the majority of the kibbutzim and moshavim and sderot and people who really suffered the worst massacre on October 7th were evacuated to. And we also knew that it's going to be chaotic. There were so many organizations and volunteers and people with a lot of good intentions who, you know, I only half joking, they were sending their grandmother's socks as donations, which is, you know, very nice because it really comes from the heart, but not very much needed. So we realized there's really a need to build a system to coordinate all these efforts. And that's exactly what we did in many of these hotels with the evacuees. We used a special tech tool that we've used in other parts of the world from a company called Monday.com to coordinate all the volunteers and all the first responders and all the relief supplies that were coming, you know, so many boxes from all over the world, many from the States. We also realized that one of the first things that now everybody talks about, but in the beginning it wasn't clear, was mental health and trauma. And again, unfortunately, for the last 23 years, we worked with so many traumatized communities, and we have an incredible team of mental health professionals. And when we think about mental health professionals, it's not only psychologists or psychiatrists or social workers, it's also a lot of art therapists and drama therapists and dance therapists and tools that help children and adults alike release their stress and cope with trauma. We also know from our experience that it's so important to address mental health from the first moment. So we started with what we call psychological first aid, and we opened in many of these hotels what we call child safe spaces. And what are child safe spaces? Places for children to just be children, to play, to release their stress, to use art and dance, and but it's done by professional therapists, because obviously a lot of these kids, when they're given the opportunity to draw, the first thing they draw is what they saw on October 7th. So it's very important to let it out and release their stress, but it's also very important to have professional support in case it's needed, and to be able to contain these emotions and these traumas. One of the stories that I remember was, in Hebrew, safe space called Makom Batuach. And one of the mothers from Kibbutz Be'eri, a kibbutz that lost more than 100 members in October 7th, she told me, there is no Makom Batuach. How can you call it Makom Batuach? There is no safe space. And we told her, you know what, you're right. We're just going to call it a space. So that was our first focus. We opened about 12 of these of child and mother. Sorry, a lot of phones are coming in. 1 second, let me just. Sorry, that's what happened when you do a Zoom while responding to an emergency. Yeah, can you hear me okay? Okay,
yeah, you're fine now.
I see you're nodding. Great.
Yes.
Apologies. So so we started with these safe spaces, and then we realized one of the main needs was educational centers. And in partnership with Dror Israel, actually, we started, and a few other partners and the local government, we started to operate these emergency school. And people may think, why would schooling be so important? Well, I mean, math is obviously not a priority after such trauma, which is true, but schools are much more than schools. School is a framework. Schools can give some sense of normalcy in such a broken world, some stability for the kids, and not less important for their parents. So we opened these schools in the hotels. We built tents, and we brought the equipment, and there wasn't enough teachers because some of them were murdered, some of them were kidnapped, some of them were drafted. So we had to recruit teachers, and again, that's where the partnership with Dror Israel was fantastic. And we opened these schools. And we tried to give solutions for these communities and people, and try to take as much as we could of the burden and the uncertainty. And by the way, when we think about trauma, what really increases the level of trauma is the uncertainty. And there's so much uncertainty. Obviously, people don't know yet about their loved ones who are in Gaza, many of them, unfortunately. They don't know when and if they'll be able to go back to their homes. They don't know what level of support they'll be getting from the government and from others. So there's so much uncertainty, which leads to so much anxiety and really increases the trauma in an already very traumatic situation. So our goal as helpers is to minimize the uncertainty. We can't minimize all of it. There are stuff, unfortunately, that we can't control, but giving solution to these people, creating as much stability as we could, was really the key in our approach. And this is, again, based on our so many years of experience working with communities who went through similar traumas. So fast forward where we are now, it's only been 4 months, but it seems like at least 4 years. We have recruited 120 new people. And by the way, I mentioned before, we moved from being a volunteer-based organization to focus on full-time staff. Again, we've seen so many people who wanted to volunteer, but we also believe that volunteers, especially when you talk about mental health, is not sustainable. People need long-term support, long-term mentorship, and this could only be done, we believe, by actually paid professionals who can commit for the long run. So we ended up recruiting about 120 new staff members, and and we are doing these long-term mental health programs. The last two initiatives that I'll mention that are on very important and extremely vulnerable groups following October 7th. One is the Nova survivors. And again, unlike the kibbutzim, the Moshavim, and even Sderot, which I know is a city, but there's a community, there's a strong community there. The Nova survivors were all over the place. So what we try to do is help them build their own support network and community. And we did it in partnership with a place called the Secret Forest in Cyprus. So we're taking them to healing retreats and help them build their own support network. Many of them report that this is the first time they can actually sleep since October 7th. We've done already 13 cohorts. Today we started the 14th cohort. First, we thought only 50 will sign in, and more than 2,000 survivors signed in to join these activities. And the last community that we work with that I think are extremely important and extremely vulnerable are the Bedouin community. The Bedouin have been disproportionately affected and impacted by the bombings from Gaza. More than 40 Bedouin lost their lives. We also have a lot of Bedouins who were murdered and kidnapped, and 2 are still in captivity. And we have been working with the Bedouins with a great organization called HIWP, and we're building bomb shelters. We build about 52 bomb shelters for Bedouins in unrecognized villages near schools and public buildings. And we're also working on mental health and resilience and training local service providers. So yes, it's a huge operation. We need all hands on deck, and it's going to take a while. But again, now I really do see how so many great organizations and partners are coming together. So in spite of all the heartbreaking news that we hear on a daily basis, we also see so much inspiration and resilience. So these terrible crises and tragedy is also an opportunity to build bridges, which is what we're really hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you. Incredible. Thank you so much. What wonderful work you're doing. And finally, our final panelist is Noah from HIAS. This organization's been around for a very long time and has evolved over the years in an incredible way. So the floor is yours. Please tell us all about it.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here and to hear and bear witness, especially to the really important stories from our colleagues on this panel. In a moment, I'm going to share some ways that HIAS has been responding to displaced people and how we're making sure that they have the support that they need until they can safely return home. I'll just say again, this is a type of humanitarian response that HIAS conducts all around the world and never expected to have to conduct inside of Israel. As you've heard, this panel today is taking place in connection with HIAS's 6th Annual Refugee Shabbat. So in being here today, we're joining with literally hundreds of congregations and communities across the US and around the world, from Spain to Sweden, Venezuela to Israel, in celebrating the incredible strength and resilience of displaced people. I think you already heard some really clear examples of that strength and resilience this morning. And we're coming together also to redouble our commitment to making sure that all people fleeing violence, fleeing persecution, can find the safety and welcome that they need. And that support is more critical than ever because the world is facing the worst displacement crisis in recorded history. More than 110 million people are displaced right now around the world, 1 in every 74 people on Earth. And if all the displaced people on Earth were citizens of one country, it would be the 13th most populous, the 13th most populated country in the world. And as you've heard, tragically now, the heinous October 7th attacks forced hundreds of thousands of people to join this nation of the displaced. And as I'll talk about in a moment, some of these people were already refugees and asylum seekers in Israel, for whom the attacks brought back really painful memories of the exact type of violence that they were fleeing and looking for safety in Israel. HIAS has worked in Israel for 75 years. Many of you may be familiar with us in our work in the US, where we were founded on the Lower East Side at the turn of the 19th century, the turn of the 20th century, as the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, rescuing Jews who were fleeing from pogroms of Tsarist Russia and Eastern Europe. In those days, HIAS volunteers collected money, often people who themselves were recent immigrants to the US, to help people, their fellow Jews, get onto ships, come to the US. We established a base on Ellis Island, providing kosher food to people and then help them to reintegrate into the US in New York, or whether if they are meeting family further afield, buying them train tickets to get to where they were going. When the US slammed their doors, as Ayala just said, the nature of HIAS has evolved. So in 1921, the US slammed its door on Jewish immigrants and other immigrants. And so we evolved and started looking to find homes for Jewish people wherever in whatever country would accept them, Argentina, England, wherever. And then when the State of Israel was created in 1948, we were able to establish operations there and help generations of Jews from all over the world to find safety there, most recently Ukrainians in the last couple of years who fled the conflict in that country. In addition to our work in Israel and the US, we're working in more than 24 countries around the world now, providing refugees and other displaced people the support that they need, grounded in our Jewish values, and also in our people's experiences of discrimination and displacement. As we're commanded in the Torah, we must love the stranger because we were once strangers in Egypt. Or as we like to say at HIAS, we used to help refugees because they were Jewish, and today we help refugees because we are Jewish. So although the majority of our clients right now around the world, in places like Mexico, Colombia, Chad, and Kenya aren't Jewish, before October 7th, we were working to support Jews in many places around the world. For example, in Venezuela, we support members of the shrinking Jewish community there, many of whom HIAS actually helped to flee persecution and find safety in Venezuela generations ago, but who are now suffering from that country's economic and political crisis. Through the Lautenberg program, we're helping Iranian Jews to escape that country and reunite with family in the US. And of course, helping Ukrainians integrate across Europe into Jewish communities, and in Israel as well, to learn Hebrew, to get back into school, to find jobs. This is part of our duty to be al hamishmar, to be on guard, to help Jews whenever they need us. And unfortunately, on October 7th, this function was activated. So our emergency team swung into action within 48 hours, had begun assessing urgent needs, identifying partners, building a response infrastructure to enable us to meet those critical needs, and as we do everywhere in the world, to make sure that the most vulnerable don't slip through the cracks. To date, we've reached nearly 90,000 people and focused in 5 key areas. The first is food and household items, the second, cash assistance, the third is protection services, the fourth, mental health and psychosocial support, which you've heard is so critical, and then finally, advocacy. So we provided thousands of people with food and basic household items. As you just heard, in the aftermath of the attacks, even those people whose homes weren't destroyed only had moments to evacuate. And so, didn't have time to collect items, especially not to collect winter clothes, not knowing how long they would be displaced. So that's a really important component of our work. We also provide cash and vouchers so that families who've been unable to go back to work, including caregivers who are taking care of children who have been out of school or studying remotely, can buy the things they need to support themselves. And all around the world, HIAS uses cash and vouchers to support people because it enables them to have more freedom to choose what they want to buy for themselves and their family. And that's a really important means of promoting dignity, but also of reestablishing a sense of normalcy in the aftermath of a life-shattering crisis. As you also heard, in the aftermath of crises, people often feel lost and confused, uncertain of how to actually access the support they need when it's there. So our protection work includes providing displaced people with information in the appropriate languages. That's so critical for new Olim, new immigrants in particular, migrant workers, asylum seekers, for whom Hebrew is not their first language. So they can have referrals and know which specialized agencies can help them. And again, to rebuild that sense of normalcy, we are conducting child protection activities, including safe spaces, play spaces for children just to play and be kids in the aftermath of so much trauma, to just have that sense of normalcy again. And then finally, because we've recognized the often hidden toll that trauma can take, we've helped nearly 70,000 people to access mental health and psychosocial support, first aid, through our partner Iran, which is the largest crisis helpline in Israel. They received a 350% increase in calls in the aftermath of October 7th. And those calls often came from populations that don't usually call helplines, elderly people, children. And so supporting them is a really, really critical part of our response. Now, as I mentioned, because of our longstanding work with asylum seekers in Olim, we're really plugged into these communities, and we have a strong understanding of the particular challenges that they're facing in this moment, including language barriers, as I mentioned, and the inability to access certain services. I mentioned the trauma that a lot of these communities feel, and asylum seekers have been living in Israel for at least 15 years now, and they feel themselves part of the Israeli society. Many of them swung into action after October 7th, raising money, collecting goods to support other displaced people, Jews and non-Jews, their neighbors. One asylum seeker told us he fled the genocide in Darfur to Israel, and he said, "I've seen this kind of violence before. It took me back to things I hoped I would never see again." And so there's this incredibly strong sense of double trauma that people are experiencing. And then they're having another challenge, which is that they're often excluded from the official sources of services. So in addition to providing services I mentioned, we're advocating with the Israeli government for non-citizens to be included. They're also impacted by this crisis. They've also lost their jobs. They've been displaced. Members of these communities have been held hostage, are still held hostage, have been killed. But unlike their Israeli colleagues, their friends, their neighbors, they're often ineligible for support. We're going to continue doing this work, and I think it's a really important continuation of this effort to support all the most vulnerable people around the world, to make sure that nobody slips through the cracks. Just a few weeks ago, we won in the Israeli courts a really important case on behalf of Sudanese asylum seekers, many of them who themselves were also impacted by October 7th, granting them temporary status in Israel so that they're able to access vital services, including health insurance, and most importantly, don't have to return to Darfur, which is now again in another very serious crisis, which has displaced hundreds of thousands of people. And then finally, within the US, we've also been advocating for robust humanitarian funding for Israel and for Gaza to be included in the federal budget. And we've advocated for temporary protected status for Israelis and Palestinians who are here. These are people who are students, workers, tourists who were here when October 7th happened, so that if they don't want to go back, if it's not safe for them to go back, they can stay here in the US and be protected from being forcibly returned until it's safe for them to do so and they want to do so. And of course, we've also joined with other Jewish groups here in the US, interfaith groups in Europe, in condemning the rising anti-Semitism that we're seeing, also anti-Arab hate and Islamophobia, because we know that extremists are seeking to exploit this moment. And so we're reminded that all of our communities' safeties and our futures are inextricably linked. And so we're recommitting ourselves to fighting hate in all its forms as we continue to provide for the needs of the people who we serve. So thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to, I think, highlight everybody at the same time who's on our panel. Hello again to all of you. And I have some questions that our moderator, Aaron, is sending me. So I'm going to go one at a time through the questions that I'm getting for you. So Revital and Shachar, this one is for you. Because there was so much devastation in the South compared to the North, do you feel like it's difficult for people to understand the trauma you experienced having to leave your home? Do you feel like your story is not as spotlighted, or people are not paying as much attention?
Thanks again, and then thanks about these questions, because I think that when we went to live in Shlomi, we know that there is a Radwan force of Hezbollah, and we know that there are plans to attack Israel from the north. But like Yotam said, the October 7th was game changer that changed the things about these attacks that could be. So I compare myself to the people from the north each day, and I pray to God and say thanks that I'm not the Nukba attacked in Gaza, and I still alive, and my house is standing well. But the communities in the north are afraid to go back to their home, because they don't know what it should be after that we go back.
Sure.
So we are not, like Revital said, we are not afraid from the missiles, because each person in Israel is living with these missiles attacks. We have the Kippat Barzel, and all the things that Israel make to get safe for the people from the missiles attacks. But now the game change is the attack that should be or can be from the Hezbollah force in Lebanon. Well, I served in my army in these 3 months in the north border. So I know that it's realistic and it could be. And I think also that the most difficult for the evacuated people is that they don't know what is the next day. We don't
Right.
know even if we are going back to our home. But
Sure.
it's very important to say that I don't compare myself to the people from the north. I heard the stories from there and from the Nova party, and thanks God that we are not the citizens that now are kidnapped in Beirut or I don't know where in Lebanon.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very thoughtful answer. Next question, Carmi and Ayal. From Carmi's recounting of the story of residents relocating from Sderot to the Dead Sea, the government was not able to initially furnish support. And the questioner wanted to know if that has changed, and also curious about how Dror Yisrael gets its funding and if that has changed since October 7th.
So, okay. I will say that, as we said before, we are we're an educational organization that works in those communities many years before October 7th. So it was obvious for us that we will jump in and we will respond fastly, because these are our communities. And I think that if we didn't have like this connection, for example, the preschool system of Kibbutz Be'eri, which we reestablished also with our partners from Israel that I mentioned before, I think that this couldn't happen without a partnership before. And I think that in the first moment we didn't wait for the government. Our communities all around Israel started working and going to the evacuee centers and trying to understand what is happening there, and trying to speak with our partners from those communities, more than 63 communities that were affected by the terror attack, or communities from the north. There are something like 100 communities all around Israel that were affected by this, that were evacuated. Unfortunately, the government entered to his role in a slow motion, I will say.
Right.
There was a very big mess. We established schools and preschools in different places in Israel, in the south and in Haifa and all around the north. Just 1 month after the Ministry of Education started to invite the evacuee students to new schools that were established, or to schools in the cities. But also we have partnership with different municipalities, like the municipality of Sderot, the community, the hotel leadership we established in the hotels was like fruit of our partnership with the municipality. This is just one example. Also, the Ministry of Education promised us that they will fund our activities, and I'm speaking about millions of dollars, because just funding 1 week of activity in one of the evacuee centers is $14,000. So
Wow.
it's a lot of money, but we still don't know what is going to happen in 2024. Everything is shaking, everything is not known. The government promised things, but we don't know. So part of it is like our friends and donors from all over the world, from North America, for example. We couldn't invite the evacuees from kibbutz areas to be part of our high school in Mitzpe Ramon, because we didn't have enough room. So by those donations, we could buy prefab classrooms for those kids. And also, I will say just also I will mention here HIAS that also supported us. It's an opportunity to say thank you for your donation and support. And I think that our mission is to build like the resilience of the Israeli society by education and by a community. We promise to those communities that we were there before, and we will be there for how long as we need after October 7 for years. Our educators are dedicated to this, and we will do everything to allow it, but it also depends what the government will do and what also our donors will continue to do.
Thank you. Very helpful. For Noah, how is HIAS received by other non-Jewish refugee organizations, both before and after October 7th? Have you encountered anti-Semitism emerging in your own work as an organization? You had mentioned you're redoubling your efforts to combat it, but what has happened to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, one of the things that I think a lot of us at HIAS are particularly proud of is that in so many of the places that we work, we're the first Jewish people that our clients have ever met. When we support people from Afghanistan, when we support the hundreds of thousands of people we're working with in Chad, you know, until recently, until the Abraham Accords, Sudanese passports said valid for all countries except for Israel. Sudanese people never had opportunities to meet Jewish people, really. And so, you know, for them to arrive in a new country in Chad and see HIAS and see that we have, you know, our values are written in English, Spanish, French, and Hebrew, which are the basis of all our work. And I think it's a really important reflection of who we are as a community, that we're speaking to them and supporting them, not as a form of charity, but as a form of understanding of, you know, tzedakah, justice, where we are, you know, we're commanded 36 times, we're told in the Torah, to welcome the stranger. And I think that is, we are providing the type of support to people who are not Jews that our community has needed. And that, so we understand, and still needs in so many places now, including in Israel, unfortunately. And so the partnerships and collaborations that we have are really vital. We work through a process called localization, which means our approach is that we try to find the organizations that are already on the ground, who are already working in their communities, who know their communities best, who speak the local language. Now, this is, of course, less of an issue in Israel, where our staff are Israelis and speak Hebrew fluently, and you know, but in Chad, for example, we're of course hiring Chadian people, and we're working with Chadian organizations. That's the same in Mexico, Colombia, wherever the case may be. And so these partnerships are really vital. And I like to think that in addition to saving lives and supporting people, it also gives people an opportunity to understand a little bit more about who we are as Jewish people, and build bridges between our communities.
Beautiful. For Yotam, now that you're back, I know you're back and forth responding. Thank you for coming back.
Sure.
Is there a shortage of mental health professionals, and how are you dealing with that if that's the case? Who's supporting them? And can therapists based in the US be helpful for your work? I know personally, as a mental health professional, I get lots of messages that are flying around about the shortage and how people can be helpful, but there's not a lot of clear information. So I'm curious about this one too, on a personal and professional level.
Yeah, no, it's a huge challenge, and the term that I hear from many of my colleagues and professionals here is generational trauma, where the whole country is traumatized. And I think actually a lot of the people who are out of the country, many members of the Jewish communities, and so everyone needs support on different levels. And you mentioned the need to help the helpers, to support the supporters, the first responders, the people who were just released from their reserve duty. So it's really, the needs are really overwhelming. Now, I think what is important to know in terms of people who want to support is that we really strongly believe that for mental health professionals, the long-term commitment and trust, because so much of this, and it came up in with the other panelists, so much of what people feel here is that the trust was broken. And I think trust is the most basic thing. And in order to build trust, you need time. And so when we talk about mental health support, the most important thing is long-term commitments. Short-term interventions could actually do more harm than good. So when people want to support and wants to join, I think trust is very important and long-term commitment. Second thing is obviously the language barrier. I do think the language is crucial. We are working sometimes around the world with people who don't speak the language, but very quickly we find local partners and local team members, and we train them, and they are the ones who are giving the actual support. The other thing which I think is very important is understanding that people need different things, right? Some people will need very clinical support, whether it's psychiatric treatment or clinical psychology, but other people would be needing what we call psychosocial support, which is a lot of community work, support groups, art therapy, etc. On that note, I think it's also very important to find a way to standardize, and that's what we're trying to do. For us, for example, all the mental health professionals that we're taking have a second degree in some kind of trauma-related work. Again, not because there aren't amazing therapists that don't have second degree, but we have to put the limit somewhere, and we have to set the standards. We do see a lot of self-appointed therapists coming, and again, some of them may be the most incredible professionals, but we don't know. And we have to set the barriers, and there were actually a lot of work done with the Nova survivors that was not really standardized. So we have to be careful with that. So I think that these are the things that we need to take under considerations. But yes, and the good news, I guess, there aren't many good news, but the good news is that at least mental health now is less stigmatized. We see a huge understanding in the public opinion that everyone needs it in different ways. And we are starting to see more and more investment in mental health, definitely coming from the philanthropy side, and hopefully soon also from the government.
Thank you. Very quickly, if we could hear from everybody in just a couple of words, what gives you hope? Let's start with you, Yotam. You're sort of on the heels of your own comment there. So what gives you hope right now?
A lot of things gives me hope, but basically 3 small things, not small, big things, but I'll share them shortly. One is how all of the people here in Israel have come together. Everyone is mobilized. Everyone is doing something. Again, and I'm talking about everyone, not just a specific part of society. So, and people are united and focused on what keeps us together. The second thing is the incredible bridge being built with Israelis, Jews and Arabs in Israel. I mentioned the Bedouin community, but I've seen it with all the Arab Israelis community who are very involved and very engaged in different ways. And I think through this terrible tragedy, we do have an amazing opportunity to build bridges with them. And the third thing, which is challenging but very important, is how this terrible tragedy is an opportunity to build bridges between Jews and Israelis around the world, and more specifically with the younger generation. We definitely need to support each other on any day, but especially now. And we're seeing it happening for so many people who stepped up, in many different ways, from advocacy to fundraising to volunteering to, and it's incredible. And I just hope it will be long-term.
Amen. Revital and Shachar, well, what gives you hope these days? Might be hard to answer.
People are traveling all over the world. They take a vacation, and after 10 days, they just want to go back home. One day, Revital told me that she just want to get her pot and to put the egg in her kitchen, to make a egg in the kitchen, not to eat in hotel. But
yeah,
our hope is to go back to it, to the north and
normal life.
To normal life, and to be really with peace with the Lebanon people that don't want the war, and to just have a normal life.
I'm into that one too. Eyal and Carmi?
I think when you asked the question, I thought of a story that some of our friends that are working at the reestablished the preschools at Kibbutz Be'eri at the Dead Sea at the hotel next to us. What they told us was, in one of the first weeks, they got these great donations of like little plastic houses that the kids can play in. And our friend, she told us that they realized that the kids were quickly starting to play a game where they would tell everybody they had to go quickly and quietly into the houses. And they had to be really, really quiet in the houses because there were bad people outside. And our educators, were being advised by these amazing psychologists, and the psychologist told them that it's actually a good thing that the kids have a chance to play out this trauma that they've experienced, and that's how they're dealing with it, is through play. And she told us that the psychologists that are helping them said that they should let them keep doing this, and that the one thing that she asked them to do is, at the end of this play, to give them many different opportunities as to how it could end. And then the kids can also choose how they want to end that story. And I think it's a story that sticks with me. And I think it tries to represent also what we're trying to do with kids and teenagers and adults, and including ourselves, is to have an opportunity to regain a sense of control and a sense of agency in our lives and in their lives. And I think that includes, I'm thinking of like we have about over 20,000 Arab youth that participate in these activities and are helping different communities. And I think, including ourselves, that when in such a chaotic time, when something that I think helps build your resilience is when you take responsibility. You take responsibility for someone outside of yourself, your neighbors, your community. And I think that's what we're experiencing too, and that what we're trying to allow opportunities for others is to take responsibility and to strengthen your individual resilience, but also our society, our social resilience together. And I think that those little moments of helping others are turning into a big thing, a stronger and more resilient Israeli society.
Okay. And Noah, what gives you hope?
So much of what has been shared all gives me hope as well. I think it's just this incredible sense that Israeli society is coming together in all its beautiful diversity. one of my colleagues, who is himself a Sudanese refugee from Darfur, says that he gets calls every day from refugees in the country wanting to help defend the country. And he said, one might think if you're not a citizen of this country, you might want to find ways to leave to a safer place abroad. But no, the reaction is, I want to help my people. I want to help this country, because people consider themselves part of the country. And if you live in Israel, you go to South Tel Aviv, for example, you might see a Filipino kid walking down the street with a Sudanese kid, and they're speaking together in Hebrew. Hebrew is the common language that unites them. And you might, not always notice, the Sudanese asylum seeker who's washing the dishes in the restaurant, or the Eritrean who's delivering the food, but they're there and they're part of society. And I think one of the things that this conflict and this horrific situation has brought out is this sense of neighbors coming together, of knowing each other and connecting, Jews and non-Jews, Israelis and non-Israelis. And I think, as others have said, this gives me an enormous amount of hope for the strength of the social solidarity that can be built and built upon moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. So inspiring. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. I feel like I could talk to and learn from all of you for hours, and I'm sorry we have to end. I do want to turn it over for a few moments to Rabbi Martyr, who can just share hopefully a few closing remarks with us.
Thank you. You asked the question about what gives them hope, and maybe we'll ask to reflect on ourselves here and from the community. What gives us hope is the amazing work and the readiness of individuals to give themselves over, Mesirut Nefesh, really give themselves over to this important work without concern for themselves and for their own lives. And if this is what Am Yisrael is going through, perhaps what they're going through themselves as part of that, as Carmia describing, to be there. And you use words, that the words that arise for us are the resilience and strength and bravery and selflessness and support and stepping up, and that is humbling and inspiring for all of us. I also know it's tiring, and it's wearing and not easy to do. With after 4 months into this, knowing that this is much more work, even if tomorrow everyone will be brought back to their homes, there's work that will to be ongoing for the length of time ahead. And so we really want to thank you for all the work that you do. We from afar can thank you, to let you know that our goal is to be supportive. We've tried as a community to be financially supportive. People have gone to volunteer in different ways, but to thank you for the modeling you've done for us about what it is to be present for one another. I'll close with the words with which Moshe Rabbeinu closes in his of his brachos that he offers in Zod HaBracha. And one of the brachot he offers is Vayishkon Yisrael Betach Badad en Yaakov, that Israel will be able to dwell Betach Badad. So Betach means securely, and that bracha we find a few times over. To be Leshevet Betach, to be feel secure in your land. But Rashi comments on Betach Badad. He says Kol Yachid v'Yachid Ish Tachat Gafno, every individual, each one under his own vine, Mefuzarim, be able to be spread out a little bit. The Ein Tzrichin Lihitasef Le'Shev Yachad. They don't have to be to gather together in one place, whether it's in the hotels because of the displacement or because of the fear of the Oyeb, as Rashi concludes the pasuk. The bracha is people should be able to not just live in Israel, but to be able to live in their homes securely and safely. And knowing all that, and then continues to say, Ashrecha Yisrael Michamocha, blessed are you, Israel, who is like you, whether God protects us. And I would say, from what we heard today, from the way we're looking out for one another, and you especially have been looking out for one another. Please let us know more that we can do to be of help. And thank you for inspiring us the way you have today. God, to continue to help you do the holy work that you're doing.
Thank you, everyone, so much for participating. Information about how to support the organizations that are represented by our amazing panelists is in the chat, so please avail yourselves of that information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care,
Be
everyone.
well, everyone.
And everyone who's been listening, give generously. Give as generously as you can.
Thank you so much. Toda rabba.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.